Assassin's Creed Origins. This may very well be our last Assassin's Creed Origins video, because by the time you're watching this, in a few short days, the next Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, will be coming out, and that will be set in ancient Greece, and I will certainly be playing it. Now that said, I'm actually pre-recording this video because I am away when this video comes out, and I am similarly away when Assassin's Creed Odyssey comes out, so I won't be able to try it out for a little while. It'll be a few weeks yet before I make a video with it, but that's something you can look forward to. But you can let me know if you would like to see Assassin's Creed Odyssey in action, or if you'd like to see more Origins. I'm certainly open to the idea of doing more of these Origins educational tours. I love it. And I know many of you do too, but we'll just play it by ear, I guess. Anyway, today we find ourselves in Giza, which is an ancient, even ancient to the ancient Egyptians of this era, Biax era, an ancient necropolis with all kinds of tombs and enigmatic ruins such as the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids, which you can see in the background there. So let's fly for a second. Let's take Senu for a little cruise. So the plan for this video is to check out the little port settlement of Giza on the Nile, which is full of all kinds of ruffians and merchants and ne'er-do-wells, mostly tomb robbers and people looking to sell the wares found within these tombs. And we're going to take a very quick tour initially, which is sort of an overview of the Giza Plateau and the necropolis that is found here, the vast necropolis. Then we're going to dive into the mysteries, the riddle, if you will, of the Sphinx, which has got to be one of the most enduring icons of ancient Egypt and the mysteries surrounding it. And then if we have time, we'll have to see, but if we have time, we'll do a tour in the Great Pyramid, and there's several there, including the upper chamber and lower chamber tours, subterranean chamber. But I think we'll probably only have time for one, if that. So, I do love just flying around with Senu. Such a lovely game. Unfortunately, I've had to disable one of my favorite parts of this game, which is the music, because I kept receiving copyright claims on my previous videos from Ubisoft, which is just drives me nuts. I hate when that happens, but specifically it was the music that was the problem, so I had to turn it off for this tour, for which I do apologize. Alright, let's go for a little walk here. And of course, worth noting that while there are no story spoilers exactly in this video, oh, hello camel man, angry looking camel guy, couple of horse dudes. While there are no story spoilers directly, of course this does visit areas that are present in the game, which are involved in the story at one point or another, so if you want to be completely unspoiled, I guess you better not watch. I guess it's a little late for that, really, because now you know that the Great Pyramids are involved, but So this is the ramshackle merchants settlement of Giza, and like I said, it's mostly full of tomb robbers, pillagers, and the people trying to sell what they find, or perhaps cheap knockoffs of what they find. A whole collection of little statuettes there. Oh, kitty. Did you know? I can't remember if we've done this in a previous episode, but you can pet cats in Assassin's Creed Origins. Let's see if we can make it happen. I know you're eager for the tour, so am I, but petting cats is very important. Come on, Bayek. Rats. No cat for us. Hold on. I really want to pet this cat. There we go. Kitty. So cute. Meanwhile, these guys are like, what is going on here? This random guy creeping around, petting this cat. Okay. Mission accomplished. We've petted the kitty. Let's get this tour started here. Because we've got a couple of tours lined up here like I described, and this one's short, but the others are quite long. An overview of the Giza Necropolis. It's only 3 stations. Learn about the plateau, hosting most famous necropolis of ancient Egypt. I think they're missing a the. Hosting the most famous necropolis of ancient Egypt. Oh, suddenly. The light of day. It does that. They like you to take these tours at certain times of day. I guess they think it's lit nicely at certain times of day, so I find it'll alter your time of day depending on what tour you start. The Giza Plateau. The Giza Plateau is located on the west bank of the Nile and was considered by ancient Egyptians as the domain of the dead. The pyramidal complexes found there were built over the span of 3 generations during the reign of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. There's a sort of aerial overview sketch of what the Giza Plateau might have looked like during its heyday. It's got the big 3 pyramids and then all these low rectangular mastaba tombs scattered about. I expect we will learn about that in a moment here. Like I said at the beginning, this might be our last wander in Origins, unless you guys really want more. But I wanted to make sure that we sort of did the big things, you know, the pyramids, the Sphinx. Those are pretty crucial for an ancient Egypt tour, so I thought we would try and get those done here today. An immense funerary complex. The Giza area, now famous for its 3 pyramids, is part of a wider grouping of funerary complexes. Rulers from this period generally elected to be buried in the area. The focal point of the entire region was the city of Memphis, chosen as the capital of Egypt at the beginning of the Old Kingdom. And I doubt we're going to get to Memphis in this video. I wasn't planning on it. It would become a very long video indeed, but Memphis is also in the game. And if you guys wanted, we could go check it out in another video in future. Bayek has quite the strut going on, doesn't he? Very purposeful walk. Swagger, one might say. A strict alignment. The placement of the Giza monuments, and particularly that of the pyramids, followed a practical yet strict alignment. First, they focused on cardinal points, and then they accounted for the natural geology of the plateau. Here's sort of a schematic, topographic view. Topographic plan for a part of the Memphis Necropolis, it says, which I suppose is the Giza Plateau. Okay, so that was that tour. That was pretty quick. So now let's wander back. By wander I mean sprint, apparently. We can slow it down. Oops. Walk into a rock. Okay, apparently we're sprinting. It's okay. The next tour that we're going to do is significantly longer, and it's going to be the Sphinx, and I'm looking forward to this one. I would really like to know more about the Sphinx because I don't actually know much about it at all. This is the kind of market that has sprung up around the dealing of tomb goods in Giza, all kinds of sarcophagi and valuable antiquities. Okay, I think this is the one, yeah, just over here, where the Sphinx tour starts. 22 stations. Learn about the Great Sphinx of Giza and different changes the Sphinx endured through time. 15 minutes, but you know it's going to take us longer. Riddles of the Sphinx is the name of this tour. And it's all about the Sphinx and the changes that it's undergone through the centuries. What is a Sphinx? A Sphinx was originally meant to be a personification of the king. The human head, wearing a pharaonic regalia, was fused with the body of a lion, thus sharing the qualities the powerful animal possessed, namely its power, the swiftness of its attack, and its majestic authority. By these very virtues, it was also considered a symbol of protection. Unsurprisingly, statues of sphinxes could be found along the Dromos, protectors of the path taken by the gods to reach the temples. Interesting historical photograph. A temple at Karnak, I suppose, it says here, alley with ram-headed sphinxes, dating to the first dynasty. When was it built, and who does it represent? Over the centuries, enthusiasts and historians theories do exist, however, some more credible than others. One theory supposes that Jedfrey chose to pay homage to his father, Khufu, by building the Great Sphinx of Giza. The stone temple on the eastern face of the Sphinx would have been added later on by his brother and successor, Khafre, in order to strengthen the divine worship of their father. It would be the first Egyptian temple oriented with the sun. I didn't know that, but I guess it makes sense. It's facing east-west. It rises, or it faces the rising sun. Khafre's legacy. Question mark. Another theory suggests that the Sphinx was built by Khafre and was meant to represent him. The arguments to support this hypothesis are based on the fact that the limestone beds used for the main work of the temple of the Sphinx are geographically and architecturally similar to the valley temple of Khafre. Some believe that Khufu himself built the Sphinx, which was later finished under his successors, Jedfrey and Khafre. These arguments are based on the stylistics of the engraving, the typology of the nemes, I don't actually know what that means, and the absence of a beard at the time of construction. We have a royal bust, well, a head here anyway. The lost colors. While ancient Egypt as a whole leaves a rather monochrome vision of its monuments and statuary, it is vital to understand that in ancient times, absolutely everything was painted. The sun eating away at the pigments of the colors, the sand, the climate, and the implacable impact of time unfortunately destroyed the glorious colors of the Sphinx of Giza. Documents from an Arab Egyptologist of the 12th century, Abd al-Latif al-Baghdadi, indicate that traces of red were still visible at this time. Today, however, the only color that remains are traces of red close to the ears of the Sphinx, as well as hints of blue and yellow on the nemes, there's that word again. Traditional colors for that type of headdress. Okay, so maybe it's the headdress then. The pigments for the color red was man-made, obtained by mixing different products such as clay, quartz, sand, and very finely crushed hematite. So I guess what we see in the game here is just a best guess at how it might have been painted. Lots of stops in this one, very dense. A behind the scenes bit. Sure, why not? The importance of red. Red had a strong symbolism in ancient Egypt. It was both the color of life and the color of death. It could represent the sands of the desert or the brilliance of the sun. Red was also associated with the god Seth, vengeful and destructive. The Egyptian word for red, Desir, is also the word which was used to signify the desert or the royal crown of Lower Egypt. Very interesting. I had no idea. idea. I wonder if there's some link in the root of the word there. In art, red was also the color used to paint the bodies of men, while the yellow was used for women. It is possible that there were also color restoration efforts during the Sate period, about 600 years before Cleopatra's rule, as indicated by notes on the inventory stele, discovered in 1858 by Auguste Mariette. It is because of this that the team made the decision to display it with its full range of colors, even though the Sphinx's colors would have likely faded by Cleopatra's time. That's interesting. So, during Bayek's era, I guess if it hadn't been for a potential restoration, they wouldn't have its colors on it, but I guess they thought it would be cool to have it colored, so they decided to go with that as the canonical option. Well, looks like we gotta climb. Right along the back of the Sphinx. Oh wait, hold on. We missed one down below. Gosh, it's very dense, isn't it? Thought it seemed weird that there was nothing on the back. Oh, kitty. Kitty. Oh, cute. Did you see how it came running? It came running for pets. Here, have pets. Hold on. You gotta get it just so. This is worth it. Come on, Bayek, pet the cat. The cat came for pets. I know this is captivating for all of you guys, but oh, it's giving up. So cute though, it came running all the way over. Okay. No pets for Kitty today. The Great Sphinx of Giza. Dating from the 4th dynasty, approximately 2600 to 2500 BC, the Great Sphinx of Giza is the oldest and largest sphinx that we know of. Carved from a natural limestone outcrop, the Sphinx measures 19.8 meters in height, 73.2 meters in length, and 14 meters in width. I feel like that should have probably been the first stop. That seems like kind of just general background knowledge. Oh, some more behind the scenes. The use of limestone. In order to bring polish to the imposing monument, several blocks of limestone were added after the initial construction phase. Since then, there have been numerous attempts at preservation. The polish present in the game integrates some aspects of modern restoration attempts. The team made this choice to present a more iconic version of the Sphinx of Giza to the player. Today, the Sphinx is called the Terrifying One. This appellation is translated from its Arabic name, Abul Hol, which in turn was derived from Balhuba in Coptic. Okay. Interesting. It's not really that terrifying though, is it? I mean, maybe it was more terrifying initially, but I don't think it's a particularly terrifying looking monument. A natural stone promontory. The Sphinx as a whole was carved in situ from a natural stone promontory. Its limestone used in its construction. The level of sodium contained in the groundwater which abuts the stone is also a contributing factor. A 19th century photo of the Sphinx. That whole early era of Egyptology is quite fascinating too. It's something I'd like to know more about. Natural bedrock. The natural bedrock is seen through the oblique natural strata of the Sphinx's body that are similar to the surrounding limestone. That's a pretty quick little station. And here's an old photo from 1909 of the Sphinx. We get a station on his butt. Sphinx openings, really? On his butt? For real? Since antiquity, people have always believed there was a hidden tomb deep within the Sphinx. It is thought that attempts to plunder the Sphinx began as far back as the First Intermediate Period. Since then, numerous attempts to pierce the Sphinx's secrets have been carried out, leaving indelible scars upon the monument. Interesting. This is quite something, isn't it? This is some kind of artist's representation of Giza, I guess, from 1762. And it takes some artistic liberties, to be sure. The giant Sphinx head sort of by itself, and then these very tall, pointy pyramids in the background. Very strange. Interesting, though. Big jump. Behind the scenes, this is a little bit of a spoiler. I do apologize. The back entrance. Oh my gosh. These guys, this is their sense of humor. The back entrance. 12 meters long and cut during pharaonic times. Another entrance in the back of the Sphinx aroused curiosity. Although Tutmos IV attempted to seal it off, it was possibly reopened by treasure hunters. It was rediscovered by Howard Weiss and mapped more recently by Mark Lenner. This entrance at the back of the Sphinx leads to different cavities of a few meters each, in directions going inside the statue's body and under the surface. The team has used this opportunity to extrapolate a little more. Indeed. We won't say any more than that, but I did not know that this back entrance was actually a real thing. I assumed that the whole existence of it, oh boy, no pun intended, was fanciful, made up by the developers, but evidently I was wrong. Theories and science. While there have been no major discoveries pertaining to the Sphinx of Giza in recent years, theories and hypotheses continue to emerge. Without validation provided by archaeological sources, however, they remain unsubstantiated. Oh, did we look at the... Oh, I guess it's just there's no picture. The Anubis Theory. The first of the main theories as to the Sphinx of Giza's meaning posits that the Sphinx was originally a massive representation of the god Anubis. Its principal arguments are that the head of the Sphinx is disproportionate compared to the size of its body. The second theory believes that the representation of two sphinxes on the stela of Tutmosis IV would indicate that another stone sphinx had existed on the site itself, possibly even in paired symmetry on the other side of the Nile. However, neither of these theories can be verified in any way. So that's not super useful if they can't be verified, eh? Here's a statuette of a recumbent Anubis. Oh, more behind the scenes. Lots of that. A montage of different versions of the Sphinx during development of the game. Oh, cool. Recreating the Sphinx. Several scientific projects using new technologies have been put in place in the past decades. The most important was led by Mark Lenner and his team, who specialized in the study and survey of the Giza Plateau, including the Sphinx site. The mapping made it possible to see the materials used to construct the Sphinx, analyze the different layers of erosion, and figure out the most fragile areas to protect. After a few attempts to give the Sphinx artistic proportions, the team instead decided to use photogrammetry mapping to faithfully reproduce the proportions of the Sphinx. Very cool. So this is, at least the proportions are accurately represented, despite the fact that there's more detail, of course, and paint. I just love how much effort was put into all aspects of this game, but especially this kind of thing, and making things accurate. Amenhotep II's revival. What the Sphinx of Giza represented during its construction, and how the Sphinx was perceived by the Egyptians of the New Kingdom, are two very different matters. Originally a representation of the king imbued with the power of the lion, the Sphinx was eventually viewed as a direct representation of the most divine. It is theorized that kings of the New Kingdom believed that the Sphinx of Giza was the one who recognized and legitimized the ruler of Egypt. Thus, despite the fact the Sphinx of Giza was partially buried under the sand during his reign, Amenhotep II knew that the monument was of great importance. And here we have the Sphinx of Amenhotep III. Again, always so fascinating how so much of this was ancient to even the ancient Egyptians. Just boggles the mind. The Setepet. Amenhotep II built a second temple dedicated for the Sphinx as Hormaket, to pay homage to Khufu and Khafre, his predecessors. It became a common habit for this dynasty to spend time with the royal courts at the Sphinx. Its sanctuary became known as Setepet, the Chosen. Huh. That's cool. Scarab inscribed with the throne name of Amenhotep II. Featuring a sphinx. The whole top half has a sphinx on it. He liked his sphinx. Leaving marks. II built a statue of himself anchored between the paws of the Sphinx, likely to legitimize his reign, alongside a stela found by Selim Hassan. Many other pharaohs of this dynasty, such as Tutankhamun and Ramses II, also left marks of their passage in a similar fashion, sometimes even stripping the stones of nearby temples and pyramids to do so. Amenhotep II's son and successor, Thutmose IV, was a frequent offender. I bet you that happened a lot. I bet you a lot of things, bits and pieces of temples and monuments, were recycled over the thousands of years of Egyptian history. Ramses II making an offering of incense and water to the great Sphinx, Harmachis. So this would be, I guess, Amenhotep II's statue. Is that what it said? I think so. Oh, hello, Senu. Good birdie. Thutmose IV and the Sphinx. While sleeping between the Sphinx's paws, the future Thutmose IV saw in a dream the god, or Marquette, proclaiming his coming ascension on the throne of the two lands. This was, of course, on the condition that he remove all of the sand covering the Sphinx, which stood guard as the personification of the god, and should thus never be engulfed by the sands of the desert. I guess he probably did it. I don't know. This is a cool picture, dating from the mid-1800s, showing the Sphinx buried in sand. It's a very romanticized period, the sort of early days of Egyptology, but it would have all been so mysterious to these people, sort of rediscovering this piece of ancient history. The Dream Stela. The 15-ton Dream Stela, built by Thutmose IV to commemorate his dream, was discovered by an Italian Egyptologist, Giovanni Battista Caviglia, in 1818, when he undertook the task of freeing the Sphinx from the sand which had, yet again, covered it. This seems to happen a lot. I bet you it's hard to keep the sand away. Caviglia was looking for an entrance into the structure of the Sphinx, but instead he discovered an open-air chapel and stelas between the paws. Ashes from a ceremony were still present. Protected by sand, they quite possibly were from the last ceremonies in Roman times. And here's the stela at the base of the Sphinx as photographed in 1853. So cool. Of course, they may not have been the best archaeologists back then. I bet you there's a lot of very valuable knowledge or information that was lost due to mishandling of artifacts and things like that, but it's still a very interesting period. The Sphinx's beard. That same year, it's not Caviglia, it's Caviglia. Sure. Caviglia discovered fragments of the Sphinx's beard that had probably been added during the New Kingdom. Because who doesn't look better with a beard, right? If many of these pieces are held by along with a piece of the uraeus that was on the Sphinx's headdress. I don't know what a uraeus is, and I unfortunately don't remember seeing the piece of the Sphinx's beard at the British Museum either. It is believed this fragment of beard was possibly kept in place thanks to the statue of Amenhotep II, which was supposed to be located under the head of the Sphinx. So I guess he held it up. Another 19th century Sphinx photo. We're fairly nearly reached the end of our tour here. Our second to last stop. Once again, we see the painted face, the missing nose. Ah, yes, very prominent feature. A popular cultural legend purports that the nose of the Sphinx of Giza was lost during the time of Napoleon Bonaparte to the cannon fire of French soldiers in training. However, engravings from before the time of that campaign already depicted the Sphinx without a nose, indicating that it had been removed before the French campaign. And this is actually a painting of Napoleon beholding the Sphinx, circa 1868. This is really neat. I think this is a super cool painting. It almost looks like a piece of video game concept art, doesn't it? Fascinating. But we've got a nose here. Alright, last stop, guys. An iconoclastic act. The most plausible hypothesis is based on the research of German historian Ulrich Hermann. During the 1980s, Harman compiled medieval sources written by Arab authors. In doing so, he discovered that the Sphinx was once perceived as a favorable omen, a deity supporting sediment-nurturing floods and crops. Around 1378, a Sufi by the name of Muhammad Sa'im al-Dar could not stand this vision of the monument, and in an iconoclastic act broke the nose of the Sphinx. Buddy, why? According to the texts, he was then hanged and burned between the legs of the Sphinx for his crime. Wow, that was just a terrible choice all around for everybody involved. Well, that's a happy way to end the tour. Alright. So, that is the history of the Sphinx. Now that was a pretty long tour. It actually took a lot longer than I had expected. It always does, doesn't it? I'd really wanted to do a pyramid tour, but I think we've pretty much reached the end of this video, so instead we're just going to climb to the head of the Sphinx, which has this snaky thing on it. And I think we're going to call it a video, my friends. I do hope you enjoyed this. I always love going back to Assassin's Creed Origins and learning more about ancient Egypt. The discovery mode is just so fascinating, so well done. And of course the base game itself is great too. Hey, Senu. Like I said, my intention is to make some videos with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, although I'm not certain if it's going to have a discovery mode like this. I hope because it might not be until sometime after launch. So we might get some more Origins videos first. We'll just have to see, but let me know what you would like to see. Would you like to continue our ancient Egypt discovery tour? Or would you like to move on to Odyssey and the Greek world? We'll have to see what people